Can you hear me? Yes, okay, good. Prior to us coming back to order, I'd like to refer anyone who needs translator services to Ms. Paula Balbuena at the podium.
Thank you, President Brown. Buenas tardes, habla Paula Balbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame el 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 935-243-237 más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 935-243-237 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com, dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la página en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Balbuena. Welcome to Modesto City Schools regular board meeting of March 27th, 2023. This meeting is now called to order. I see that we have all board members present, so no need for us to take a call for roll tonight. Let's see, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and the recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide comments. It's outlined on the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person before the board. Any comments received via email or voicemail following the posting of the board agenda and prior to noon the day of the board meeting will not be read aloud, but have been transcribed and printed with copies provided to each board member prior to the start of the board meeting and are available to the public. The voice and email public comments will be attached to a future board meeting minutes for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. So regarding public comments, if you do wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject that is not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. If you need assistance from our translator, please indicate so on the request card. Every person who wishes to address the board, please fill out a card. You will find cards in the lobby, and you can hand your comment card to Ms. Chambers in the back of the room. There she is. I also want to remind you that if you wish to make a complaint against a specific district employee, you should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are available in the lobby, as are agenda copies, which outline the procedures we will observe during the period for public comment. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. If you plan to speak on a topic, please fill out a card now, as no cards will be accepted after the period for public comment has begun. The maximum time for any one speaker is 3 minutes, for a total of 30 minutes. So in the event that we have more speakers than our 30-minute time period allotment allows, we may decide to shorten the individual speaker time limit and/or extend the total amount of time for public comments to accommodate more speakers. This will be decided based on the number of comment cards that we receive. So I do need to report out from our closed session portion of the meeting. The board in closed session unanimously voted to reject claim number 618386 and claim number 618465. We're pleased this evening to welcome two students from Robertson Road Elementary School to lead us in the flag salute this evening. And as I read your name, please stand. The first is Victoria Aquino Torres. Sixth grader Victoria is an exceptional scholar who always goes above and beyond to help others. She participates in music and is a member of student council. Victoria is an amazing artist and enjoys being creative, designing art projects, and spending time with friends. Following college, Victoria would like to be a fashion designer and own her own business. Amy Chavez Peral. Sixth grader Amy is a member of student council. She is hardworking and excels in English and writing. Amy is an outstanding role model to her peers. She is responsible and respectful to everyone. Amy enjoys being creative, riding her bike, and spending time with friends. Following college, Amy would like to be a doctor. So Dr. Amy and designer Victoria, would you please lead us in the flag salute? What's that? Oh, they did. Ah.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, salute. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I'd like to turn the time over to Dr. Noguchi for superintendent welcome and announcements.
Thank you, President Brown. Good evening, and thank you for coming out this evening. We always appreciate your time, not only sharing your thoughts and your comments with the board, but also myself. It's great to see so many people out here and filling the boardroom, so thank you for your time. It is my pleasure tonight to welcome two new leaders to our administrative team. Both of these leaders will be starting July 1 in Modesto City Schools. These individuals bring with them a wealth of experience and expertise that undoubtedly will benefit our students and our school district as a whole. When you are introduced, if you could please stand to be recognized. I know you're out there somewhere. I don't see you, but I bet you're out there. First, let me introduce Guillermo Lopez Romo, the newest principal for Robertson Road Elementary, two of your students. Lopez Romo has been a vice principal at Bayer High School for the past 2 years, and before that was an English teacher at Manteca Unified. Mr. Lopez Romo is a fierce advocate for the English language learner and prides himself on his ability in using data to inform his decisions around teaching and learning. Mr. Lopez Romo came to this country as a young child and knows the struggles and challenges and also benefits of being an English learner. He has done well. He is a graduate from Cal Berkeley with a bachelor's in political science and French. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Lopez Romo. And he is getting Robertson Road. Thank you, Mr. Godot. Secondly, I am pleased to introduce Jonathan Webb, otherwise known as John Webb. Mr. Webb is a seasoned administrator who comes with over 17 years of experience in primary and secondary education. He is also from the Valley, a graduate from Stan State and with a master's in school leadership. This is Mr. Webb's 10th year as an administrator. 6 of those, he served as a principal of junior high in Oakdale before coming to Modesto City and working as vice principal at Gregory. Don't let the secondary experience fool you. He comes with deep roots as an elementary educator. He began over in Sylvan, his teaching career, teaching first graders, third graders, and fifth graders. So he's a great asset to Sonoma Elementary. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Webb. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, President Brown.
All right, next we have reports by our board members. If you would cue in if you have a report. So it looks like first up is Trustee Maestas.
Thank you so much. I've got a very short report. It's been we've been off for a week for spring break, but right before that, I was able to go to the Stanislaus County 6th grade Math Blast competition, and where we had 6th graders from all across the county compete in 2 math competitions. And if those of you that are out there going, wow, that does not sound too amazing to me. It was the kids all worked very hard. I actually volunteered working with my son's class to get them prepared for the math competition. Mr. Rich was there. We had, about 65, 70 around that, 6th graders competing in 2 events. And a Lakewood student, Leslie Nguyen, got first place in both events and only missed 3 questions combined through the 2 events. So very impressive win by Leslie. So it was really great to see all the kids there. They put a lot of effort into that competition. And this weekend on the 1st, I won't be able to attend, but this weekend on the 1st is the County Math Super Bowl. So we usually have some good teams from Modesto High and Enox, and we'll see who comes this year. But I'm pretty excited to hear how we do on this weekend at the Math Super Bowl. Thanks.
So next speaker is Vice President Irvin. Oh, Actually, it's Board Member Mejia.
For the Vice President. I'll take it for today. So I just want, my report is, I was able to attend the Equity Committee here, and we had lots of community members there, and it's always incredible the work that we're doing around equity, so I'm just happy to report that we're continuing the work there. I also attended the NAACP dinner recognition, which was incredible. It was great to see lots of community folks supporting this great organization and lots of leaders support our schools. And lastly, I attended the 25 years, I was just going to say 25-year anniversary of Ballet Folclórico Los Falcones out of one of our local schools in South Modesto, Fairview. And it was incredible. 25 years of kids learning and living out their culture through traditional dance. It was just incredible. I think it made the Fresno Bee. Several newspapers were caught on, but we were able to see tiny ones from like 4 or 5 years old. I don't know how they look so tiny, performing to generations that already passed and on to college and came back and performed. So that was pretty incredible to see, and all our students, and they take them from anywhere within the district. But I'm looking forward to maybe expanding that and seeing how incredible it was. It was a packed house. It was a small theater at the Gallo Center, so it was pretty awesome. And one of our cabinets from the district was representing us there from CIPD, I think. Dr. Olson, yes, Dr. Olson was with me and her were there. So thank you. That's all.
Great. Now, Vice President Urban.
Yes. I attended the groundbreaking at El Vista. Several of the colleagues were there. They didn't mention it, but they were there. Groundbreaking for the cafeteria / multipurpose facility at El Vista Elementary, which was really, really great to see. Now they'll be able to house all the students in one cafeteria instead of have multiple times to eat. I was at the NAACP Freedom Fund banquet as well. Stellar Gala event over there at Center Plaza. And to top that off, during spring break, I spent my spring break with 36 students from Modesto City Schools on a historically Black college tour. 6 days. 6 days from Sunday. You ever have to go with students for 6 days? Think about it before you leave. You don't get much sleep. But we visited 7 colleges in the South and Southeast. We had several of our students get on-the-spot admissions and qualify for scholarships. We took a very diverse group of students down there. It was really amazing to be able to go to the campuses and see the students interact with students down there. We actually got to see they have these Hump Day Wednesdays where the students on campus, they play music, they have vendors, and so they got a chance to see the college students in their element on campus there. They got to interact with fraternities and sororities, and so it was really an amazing and tiring trip. I'm still reeling from the jet lag and the 3-hour difference. Got back on Friday. I got home about 1:15 a.m. on actually Saturday, and I had to go to L.A., so I left at 4 a.m. to drive to L.A. For my aunt's funeral because I was a pallbearer. So I had to do that in Los Angeles, so the sleep was very lacking. But that military training prepared me for that, so I'm here strong. That's it. That's my report.
Thanks for representing us, John.
Let me say one thing. I want to thank all of the the staff and the teachers, chaperones that were on the trip. Ms. Garman from Enoch's High School, Mr. Rucker from Davis High School, Mr. Benton from Mark Twain High School, Fallon Ferris. It was just coordinating, Chrissy, your secretary, Mr. Herbst and his staff really pulled off a really amazing event and tour on short notice. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And thank you again.
Thank you. Trustee Marks.
Great to be here, and I loved hearing all about that. And I wanted to thank you too at the NAACP event, and that your students were awesome. They were ushers, and they helped us get to our seats. They helped walk me to my car. They were awesome. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And it was a very special event. And Ruby Kennedy, Mrs. Kennedy, who's been a big volunteer in our district for many years, was awarded that night as well. So that was really special to be there and see her receive that award. So I also attended the Clergy Council with the Modesto Police. It's called the Modesto Police Clergy Council. It's with many of the pastors in our community and the law enforcement, along with probation, Gospel Mission Family Justice Center, and the DA's office. And that was a great event. I attended with our own PIO officer, Linda Mumas-Solario. Did I get it right? Okay. And it was really great to be there with them. I just wanted to say one thing about Pastor Crosby when he opened the meeting. Well, I won't say it because most of that stuff stays with us, but I'll share what I shared. I shared a little bit about our new graduation requirements and that we've added ethnic studies to our schedule in the next couple of years as we meet the requirements of state law, so that they were aware of that. And then I also, during these last few weeks, met with we had an opportunity as school board members to meet with our legislators and ask them to help us with some bills that are up before them so that we could support them. So the bills that we met with, I met with Assemblyman Heath Flores' office and also Assemblyman Juan Alanis. I learned how to pronounce his name correctly. It was a new pronunciation we learned that night, or that afternoon. And so I'll share the four things quickly. What we did was we asked them to fully fund the LCFF COLA without cuts to the arts and music and instructional materials. So there is a bill that's going to look at changing that. So we asked our legislators to help us fully fund that. And then we asked them to remain focused on sustaining our existing programs. We don't want them to make any more cuts to our existing programs. And CSBA, the California School Boards Association, has a couple of bills that we asked them to support. Was AB 1023, which would increase cybersecurity support for school districts, because the way it's written, we needed them to do that to help us out, ensure that for our schools. And then AB 906 was sustainable programs serving at-promise students, so we wanted them to support that. So we had a really good time. We did it via Zoom. It's different than meeting with them in Sacramento, but it was really awesome that their staff took time to spend with us, to ask us questions, and we had a good interaction with each staff member. And so I was glad that we had board members from our area that were able to attend that. So that's my report.
Copied that same
Oh,
information.
so, thank you. We're just passing down the same information that I just shared about that meeting with the assemblyman. There we go. Oh, there they are.
Trustee Daly.
I added a new career to my genre of things that I've done. I'm kidding. I actually went to the two groundbreakings that we had, one at Davis High for the solar system, parking system that will go in, and one at El Vista. And I'm excited because those I will be able to do the groundbreaking as well as the ribbon cutting. So I was not as busy as everybody else. I probably got some of John's missing sleep.
So this is kind of a historic board meeting. We now have on our queue all board members who can log in. So just make sure that if you have something to say, I'm not looking for your hands this time, I'm looking for your names.
I did not. I've been busy with with my main work, but I just want to say, unfortunately, I had to miss the groundbreakings, but, more power to our board members. But yes, I saw my cue, and coming up though, we'll be having some events that I'll bring up in the later board meetings about that's going to be happening in the community. Hopefully, I can share with you all. But what I mentioned to you, there's a lot of work going around right now around getting infrastructure and sewers into our county pockets. We're hoping that there'll be more meetings around that in the future. So it's an important subject for our students, especially around that we've been blessed with a lot of rain this season. So that means that our roads are flooded on and off, and so that's the importance of why we need a better sewer system in our city, but definitely in our county pockets. So that's my report.
Thank you. I've got a couple things I'd like to report. I loved the groundbreaking at Davis, and I unfortunately missed, I think it's the first one that I've missed, groundbreaking at El Vista. And I was in mourning that morning that I could not be there, because I just am so excited by all the progress that we're making with our bond funds and our community-supported efforts to improve our schools. So great things. I was also invited to be part of the Enox High School WASC accreditation meetings that happened a couple of weeks ago. That's always a really fun experience, and I would encourage any board member, if you get that chance, jump on it. It's great to see as our schools are able to show off their best stuff and to report what they're doing for our students and how they're collaborating with the community. So great job at Enox, and I look forward to reading that report. I attended I won't go into all the other things that other board members have done. I did go to the NAACP meeting. I also am our board's representative on the Association of Stanislaus County School Boards. And we had a meeting this past week, and I want to remind our board that we have a dinner meeting coming up in about 3-4 weeks on, make sure I get this date correct, on the 24th of April is the trustees' dinner. And want to let you know of some new focus that's going to start happening at those dinners. We will be highlighting and celebrating work that's being done by our students whenever they're represented. This year, Bayer High School is going to be doing the floral arrangements, and we've asked our CTE program to provide a short video clip showing those students in action in their class and possibly even putting together those floral arrangements, which will be for sale that evening, and we'll be promoting them. Coming up in future years, we're going to be looking at the CTE programs that are happening in all the districts in our county. And rather than hiring a caterer, we're going to see if we can reach out to our CTE programs that in culinary and see if they can't provide the dinner for that night, and another group the desserts. And once again, we will always be reaching out, trying to celebrate the great works that are happening within our district and the opportunities that we're able to provide to our students. So new things happening in that front. Other things, I think that's pretty much it for meetings that I've attended. So it's now time to move on to a fun part of our meeting where we we get to hear about some recognitions that are going to be presented to us. I'm going to turn the mic over to Mrs. Muma Solario for those recognitions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good evening, board trustees, Dr. Noguchi, as well as everyone that's here tonight. This is the time of the meeting where we get to recognize our students, our teachers, all of our staff members for their hard work, their dedication, and of course, innovation. And tonight we are celebrating an outstanding scholar, 9th grade student Azucena Perez for the character trait compassion. And here to read the nomination is English teacher Lisa Coy. Also here tonight in support is Assistant Principal Patrick Rodden. I understand Azucena couldn't make it tonight, but would you still like to read her nomination? Okay, come on up.
I was a singer, I got it. All right, yeah. I was a professional singer, we're good. All right, good evening. So I have a 9th grader, Azucena Perez. She is a 9th grader at Downey High School. She is a true example of what it means to be a compassionate, respectful, and responsible young lady on and off campus. Azucena has many responsibilities outside of school, taking care of her younger siblings, helping with her grandparents, and whatnot. However, yet she shows up each day to school on time with a smile and the determination to get things done. She has helped with translations for struggling students in ALD, and also she goes out of her way to help others in and outside of the classroom. She will ask students if they have enough to eat. She will bring extra food for them. She will also make sure that all the students in the classroom, without me even asking her, if they will help and translate for us. She is compassionate to students who may be sitting alone. She sits and talks with them and asks them how they are doing and why they're sitting alone if they need a friend that day. She avoids situations which could lead her into trouble. And Azucena is quick to ask what assignments she has missed if she is absent, and always asks questions to better understand and to actually get the better knowledge of the curriculum. She is a learning advocate for herself and takes initiative to be better prepared as a future member of this community. Azucena is an extraordinary young lady, and we look forward to seeing all of her future endeavors. So congratulations, Azucena. I'm proud to be your teacher.
Thank you so much. We also have tonight, we're recognizing an outstanding MCS staff member who is nominated as an MCS hero. Vice Principal of Martone Elementary, Christopher Harvey, is here tonight to read the nomination. And will Wendy Taro also please come on up?
Well, good day. So Ms. Taro, she's been teaching at Martone for quite a while, and I have the privilege of often doing SSTs with her. And she also works on the Injury and Illness Committee and PBIS. So she does a lot above and beyond just being an incredible educator. So we do a lot of SSTs and support for students, and I was, especially the last 2 years, I was really impressed in that obviously there's been a lot of learning loss, and when we meet, she really is able to diagnose and look at where there's a gap in education and guide parents and teachers in how to bridge this gap. So she's been an incredible support system to me and the teachers and parents. So I nominated her twice, and I'm glad she was recognized. So they combined my 2 nominations, so I'll do my best here. So she has been very influential in coaching the paraprofessionals to ensure that they are proficient in running small groups. So our MTSS has about 5 paraprofessionals, and part of her job was also to coach them and to assist them so that they could do their job effectively. At Martone Elementary, she closely monitors data and ensures that students are receiving targeted instruction. And it's K6, so she supports all the teachers in this and coaches them and supports them. Ms. Taro is instrumental in making this happen, especially in reading intervention. She goes above and beyond the call of duty by also serving on the Injury and Illness Committee and PBIS Intervention and Support Committee. What makes Ms. Taro a MCS hero is she is selfless and comes to school with a positive attitude each day. So one thing that was really awesome was we were kind of lacking in announcements in the morning. Used to be me or someone. So Ms. Taro came in, and every day she gets people from the student council or students to come into the office and make announcements about the character trait or things like that. And that's been really awesome this year, and the kids really love doing it. She makes an impact on the learning of individual students and supports teachers to bring out the best in their scholars. Modesto City Schools is focused on progress monitoring, and Ms. Taro is proficient and hardworking, and her effort to do does not go unnoticed. Ms. Tara, you are truly deserving of this award. Congratulations.
Trustee Mejia, would you join at the photo?
And that concludes tonight's recognitions.
Thank you. So we'll now move to item A8 on the agenda, the approval of the consent agenda. I have a request to pull agenda item C4, the approval of a contract with Storer Transportation for Special Education Transportation Services, from the consent section to the discussion action section, and that would become item B2A. And it's also been requested by one of the trustees to pull item C3 and vote on that separately. So do I have any other, any comments from the public regarding the consent agenda?
Just for clarification on what item C3 is.
Let's come back to that in just a
Okay,
moment.
I just wonder, okay, that's fine. I was just going to read the
So
title.
are there any comments from the public regarding the consent agenda or those items? Seeing none, Trustee Marks, you want to
Yes.
go ahead and make a statement?
Just that item C3 is the approval of authorization to seek bids for the perimeter fencing at 6 high school sites.
All right. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as with those changes? Okay, motion by Trustee Mejia, second by Trustee Marks. And all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. 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 That passes unanimously. So let's go ahead and look at item C3. Trustee Marks, did you want to clarify something there?
Now?
Yes.
Oh, sure. So C3, I just wanted to find out exactly which are the 6 high schools and celebrate the fact that this is our first project using the bond money. So could you tell me clarification on the 6 high schools?
Yeah, the 6 high schools are the 5 listed. Downey was not, Downey would be the 6th.
It was
Downey was
done.
not spelled out,
Okay.
but Downey High School would be the 6th. The
Okay.
only ones that are not part of this bid package is Modesto High School and Elliott.
Right. And I remember we had a discussion about Modesto being a little bit complicated, and we were going to wait on that one. So that's fine, and Elliott as well, because they pretty much have a fence. So thank you. And so the high schools, that's great. So I just wanted to understand which high schools they were going to be for the 6. And I'm excited that we're going to be able to do this. So do we need any other discussion? Or? Yes.
Do we need
just vote.
public comment on that as well? Any public comment about the item C3, the fencing for the 6 high schools? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept C3? Motion by Trustee Daly, second by Trustee Mejia. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Appears to be unanimous. All right, we'll move now to item A9, the approval of order of discussion and action. That will be with the inclusion of item C4, which will now be included as item B2A. Do I have a motion? Motion by trustee Mejia, second by trustee Marks. Those in favor? Aye. Appears to be unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to item A10, the period for public presentations. And thank you for attending tonight's meeting and showing interest in our schools. Are there any additional cards? I have 10 cards that I've received at this point. Let me just verify the number. I believe that's correct. So I'll ask each speaker to come to the podium and address the board. And you will have a total of 3 minutes to speak. So the first speaker is Susan Peters. And Ms. Peters, please come to the podium and address the members of the board. And we would ask that you I've announced your name correctly, is that correct? Okay, so Ms. Peters.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Susan Peters. I taught for 37 years. I am now retired. I come to you with some experience and knowledge. I was fortunate enough to be Stanislaus County Teacher of the Year in 2014. I've taught a variety of combination classes in those years. And I just wanted you to understand, even as a strong teacher, it is very hard to get just 1 year's worth of curriculum mastered. My concern with combination classes of 4th and 5th and 5th and 6th grade will involve huge maturity disparity as well as massive amount of skills, concepts, and differences to address. Friends that still teach say many students are still behind from the lockdowns. Hopefully, those students will eventually catch up to where they need to be. But combining grades in large classroom settings will make that all the more difficult and challenging for the students and the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark. And I'm going to ask you to pronounce your last name for us.
Etchebarn.
Yes, Mark, please go ahead and address the board.
Excellent. Good evening. I am Mark Etchebarn. I have 2 children at Enslin Elementary. We're here in opposition of the said 33 plus combination classes that are projected. We understand that there's state deficits, budget deficits, different things that have to be considered with this difficult decision before you. The general consensus amongst teachers, students, and parents is that combo classes are not providing the students with the full year instruction, as was just mentioned. Next year, at least 1,360 students are set to receive half of their grade level instruction. We believe that there is room for internal maneuvering, that the district would alleviate some of the combination classes. There are 50 plus professional development positions at the district level with teachers who could be teaching actual students and mentoring teachers at their school sites. We also know that the district has hired multiple vice principals for next year, many of whom are teachers and have had positions that now need to be filled. Many schools do not need all these administration assistants and vice principals. It is wasteful and redundant. If you need help thinking outside the box, the parents behind me, we're willing to talk. We're not here for demands. With COVID, as mentioned, we don't want to compound bad decisions with even more bad decisions. The parents were complacent during COVID. We know that you guys were under regulations that were above your pay grade, but this time we're not going to be so complacent. We're going to fight back a little bit. We'd like to see some of the classes remain a slightly smaller size. One of the missions of the Modesto Teachers Association was smaller class size. I don't think you really want to go against their word. I don't want to hear about fiscal feasibility and it not being there. Already, I've heard 2 fiscal items that have been kicked down the road for further discussion, which means you guys do think about money. That's good. But I see on the Instagram all the programs that obviously they're nice, but they're icing on the cake. Teachers, one-on-one with the students and their own age groups, that is the number one. That is the cake. The icing is just fluff if you don't have the cake. I know firsthand that public service can be a thankless job. I was on the Stanislaus County Planning Commission for 8 years. Many times, staff did a flawless job trying to convince the public that the plan was perfect. And in the end, they would lose. Not always, but they had to listen to the public. I'll leave you with this. John Irvin, Abel Maestas, and Homera Mija, we know that you're up for election next year. Let me be clear that collectively we are organized, intelligent, and financially capable of opposing your seats. The people behind us, they're just a small entourage. We have strength in numbers, and we just want you to listen. One of the things it says up there, it's every student matters, every moment counts. I don't want it changed to every student matters as long as it's convenient to the board. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Guptill.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Guptill, and I teach a first, second grade combination class at John Muir Elementary School. This is my 24th year teaching for MCS, and I'm addressing you tonight about my concerns about combination classes. By that, I mean combining 2 general education grade levels into 1 classroom with 1 teacher. In our district, one motto is, every student matters, every moment counts. It is nearly impossible to prove that students matter by making them endure a multi-grade classroom. And if every moment counts, that should be considered when creating classes that have to combine the standards from 2 grade levels into 1 school day. It's likely that most of the administrators involved in creating combination classes have not taught in a self-contained classroom since long before Common Core state standards were adopted, which means they have not lesson planned, nor taught, nor assessed using the rigorous standards by which we teach today. Consider that for ELA, or English Language Arts, there are 46 standards for first grade and 46 standards for second. In math, first grade has 22 standards and second grade has 26. Within these 140 standards are substandards to ensure that there is explicit instruction within every category. A primary school day in MCS has 296 minutes. If 79 of those minutes are for recesses and lunch, that leaves 217 minutes to teach, reteach, and assess 140 math and language arts standards. That does not include PE, art, science, nor social studies. What that means is a lot of lessons, books, and instruction are skipped because there are not enough minutes in the school day to cover everything. Of course, any teacher of any subject would tell you that, no matter how many grade levels they teach. It also unfortunately means that in a combination class, whenever 1 grade level is being taught their curriculum, the other grade level is not receiving direct instruction. Let me say that again. Several students, for many minutes every school day, cannot receive direct instruction by their highly trained assigned teacher. We are reminded frequently that the single most important factor in the success of a student is the teacher who is teaching them. If this is the case, shouldn't this teacher be given the chance to teach to their greatest potential by only having a single grade level in their classroom? What I'm urging the school board to do is to ask our district a lot of questions about the perceived necessity of implementing so many combination classes at all elementary sites. How did we go from not having combination classes for over 18 years to needing them at every site? Ask to see the projected enrollment for all sites. Ask if teachers were given the option to teach more than their cap of 24 or 34 students. Also ask how many sites had an assistant superintendent do a parent information meeting about combination classes. Thus far, I think it's only been 2. How come the parents at John Muir or Shackelford don't get an explanation? And ask if the site administrators and teachers had any input into what classroom assignments were created for each school? Or did these decisions come from the top down with no input from the people who actually have to implement the plans? I understand and agree with the district's stance that we should keep students at their home schools and not force them to be bused. But I think we can be more creative than just forcing students into blended classrooms. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and please act quickly, as every moment does count.
Our next speaker is Kathy Presley.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Presley. We are here tonight, my colleagues and Shackelford family, to talk about combination classes and represent our why. Our students and our families are our why and will be impacted by having 5 combination classes next school year, although we have 4 vacant classrooms. In single grade level classrooms, teachers are able to provide support for all learners, meeting their needs in various ways. In a combination classroom, the teacher is teaching each content area separately to each grade level independently. Where is the opportunity to support or challenge our scholars? Where is the equity in supporting all learners, a pillar of our instructional core? In the combo classroom, teachers teach one grade level while the other grade level is working independently. This is assuming students are able to work independently. Independent work means a quiet classroom to allow the teacher to teach the other grade level. A quiet classroom is not rich in academic conversation or oral language development, yet both are crucial to foundational reading skills and English learners. Where is the equity in providing opportunities for language and literacy, another pillar of our instructional core? What about equitable opportunities for informing parents? My own Lakewood neighbors were able to attend meetings regarding combo classes. Imagine our shock at finding out these parent informational meetings were held for other sites in other parts of town, but not offered for South Modesto families. Where is the equity for all MCS families, regardless of zip code? How do we become a destination district with the best educators? Being a destination district means retaining teachers. We are losing a young educator who I mentored 7 years ago. After 2 years in a combo class, they were reassigned a combo class for a 3rd year in a row and not by choice. Definitely not a model of a destination district. There are no easy answers or decisions for overcrowding. Hiring additional teachers is ideal for all stakeholders. Overflowing to sites with space is inconvenient for families. However, the impact is logistical and not educational. It affects fewer while still providing single grade level classrooms for all MCS scholars. You have an opportunity to make decisions that promote us as a destination district, hold the value of equity, and still provide the best educational opportunities for our scholars. Please reconsider combination classrooms and put our scholars first.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katie Harrington.
Good evening. My name is Katie Harrington. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Shackelford, and we are here as a Shackelford community to represent our why. Our district has spent a great deal of time and money focusing on equity and research-based instructional practices. Collectively, as a staff, our teachers have embraced every new initiative our district administrators have asked of us. Every teacher on our site is EDI certified. We embraced leveraged learning walks, grappled and became role models for the district in lesson progressions and units of study with the Brilliance Project. We employed the gradual release model of teaching, and most recently, all of our teachers have been certified or are completing the LETRS training for the science of teaching reading. All of these initiatives and practices were embraced because it was what was best for our scholars, our why. Never have we come before you as concerned as we are today. Today we are here because our why is threatened by combo classes. Combo classes are a direct contradiction to the teachings of Louisa Moats and Carol Tolan, the experts and contributing authors of the Letters program and the Science of Teaching Reading. Combo classes are not equitable. What about the families with multiple siblings that span the grade levels and have students in a grade above or a grade below each other? What about families with twins? Our site this year has 2 sets of twins in first grade, and teachers will have to decide which child gets placed in a combo class and which child gets placed in a single grade level classroom. How is that equitable for that family? They could easily be placed in a combo class in the future as well. And where is the equity for those children in combo classes year after year? Combo classes do not support the MCS vision statement that every student deserves a guaranteed instructional program, not by chance, but by design. As you know, 21 out of 22 elementary schools will be monitored by the state next year because we are not meeting targets in various subgroups. Will combo classes help get us out of state monitoring? In our Shackelford community, our stakeholders trust us and you to make the best decisions possible for their children. We must work together as partners, we must keep them informed, and we must value all of our communities regardless of the zip code. Please reconsider your plan for 5 combination classes at Shackelford next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Nicholas.
Really embarrassing to trip on my way up here. Good evening. I was here to ask for everyone to please reconsider the expansion of combination classes. My daughter is in a combination class this year, and I've seen firsthand just how difficult it is to learn in that environment. I think her teacher is an exceptional person and is doing an exceptional job. And I know that any one of us who has spent any amount of time in an elementary school classroom knows just what an amazing, difficult job that is to do successfully. I know for a fact that I would not be able to do it. And I feel like when, if we're expanding the use of 2 different sets of curriculum, we're setting the teachers up for not for success. We're asking our teachers to be experts at 2 different sets of curriculum, and we're asking another half the class to figure out what to do during that time when that curriculum is being given. And I know from conversations with my own child just how hard it is to strike that balance, especially at a small school like Insulan, where we could potentially, if I understand the facts correctly, if we could potentially have a student that would be in a combination class 3 years in a row. I don't think that anyone could say that that student would be prepared to go to junior high having that split type of learning for those 3 years. I know that you have incredibly difficult decisions to make. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes either, but I would just ask for you to please reconsider expanding combination classes. I don't think it's great for our kids, and I think, like, for me, particular, like, I know how much we give our children at home, how much time we spend reading with them, ensuring that their homework is done, ensuring that gaps in their education are met. And I know that not everyone has that support at home. I know that some people just don't have that. What are we doing for those kids? How are we setting them up to be just as successful as the children in my household? So thank you for listening, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stacy Soderstrom.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Soderstrom. I am the mother of 1 current student at Insulan, soon to be 2. As I came up here, I thought about something that I heard earlier in a speech by these 2 lovely ladies over here. I'm disappointed that there are schools, parents of children that don't know that this is actually something that's going to come to fruition potentially. We're very fortunate at Insulan to have been made aware of this. We are very fortunate to have a community of parents who are very involved with their students, very involved with their children every day. We were able to attend an informational session. We were able to meet afterwards and discuss our concerns and the challenges that we as parents may face with this decision. It is extremely unnerving to know that there are parents that are not aware of this situation and may not have had the chance to attend tonight. The other thing I'm too concerned about is the fact that, and it's been brought up by others, is the direct education. If students are placed in combination classes, and first, how will they get direct instruction? How will it be delivered equally to each of those grades? Right now, my child has a dedicated teacher who serves and takes care of her classroom. They have focused time, 360 minutes, maybe 6 hours a day, to teach the curriculum that she needs. By asking teachers to dedicate 2 different curriculums, how do we know that those teachers, or excuse me, those students are going to get the time that they need, the direct education? Following up on what others have said, my daughter is an independent learner. She will likely be okay in those classes. My concern is the thousands of students, the 20 or 30 plus combo classes of students who may not have parents that have the time or the means or the capability to work with their students. They may not have time each night to sit down and read 20, 30 minutes. They may not even have resources to have books in their homes. If those children are sent to school and placed in combo classes, they will be impacted. Their education will be detrimental to their future. And I cannot stand to see that happen in this school district. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Have a great night.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be, I believe it's June Scherer. Julie. I apologize for my eyes.
Hello, my name is Julie Scheer. I'm a Lakewood parent and a PTA member, and I'm up here to just say hello and just encourage all of you to actually eliminate all of the combination classes in Modesto City Schools. I want you to consider the trickle-down effect that your decision will have. Many of us young families saw it and cherished being in the Lakewood School District, but I believe it was an option that if we did not want to be a part of the combined classes to bus out of that school district. And I can tell you that some of us would consider pulling our kids out of Modesto City Schools into other options for education, which would perpetuate the low enrollment issue that's happening. I want you to look around. Nobody has spoken in favor of the combined classes. This is a huge concern for everyone present, I believe. And I would like if there would be any other options available to hire the educators we need, such as potentially pulling from Measure H monies, from bond. There has to be other options to finance additional teachers for our schools. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Lauren Montalvan.
Hello, good evening, members of the board. My name is Lauren Montalvan. I am a parent of 3 Lakewood Elementary students. Tonight, along with many parents and teachers in the audience, I am speaking out again in opposition of the combo classes planned for our school and our district next year. For the last 8 months, I have been in communication with Dr. Noguchi, Amanda Moore, and our principal, Denise Powell, about the issues combo classes have presented for our students, specifically for my child's 5th grade class. Her classroom of 23 kids has been without a teacher for the last 5 months. After already suffering through the pandemic and learning loss like their peers, they are suffering. They have had countless daily subs, 2 long-term subs, and starting just today, a new teacher for the remaining 9 weeks of school. We are here tonight because we have been told these same children will be placed in a combination class next school year. After all they have pushed through the last 3 years, they cannot be asked to face another challenge. They are struggling and they deserve a grade-specific educator to help them catch up and thrive in their final elementary school year. Dr. Noguchi has stated that the nationwide teacher shortage is what is forcing this need for combination classes. I have reached out now to other school districts in our area, including Ceres, Ripon, Oakdale, Turlock, and Sylvan school districts, and none of them are resorting to grade combination classes. Modesto City Schools has plans for 30 next year. We cannot be seen as the destination district that we aspire to be if we cannot provide grade-specific educators to our children like our local counterparts. Our children need every advantage at your disposal after the challenges they have faced these last few years. While I don't doubt that some children may do well in a combination class, as it's been suggested, this setup must be evaluated on a class-by-class, student-by-student, teacher-by-teacher basis. As now more than ever, our students require learning environments fit custom to their needs to bridge the gaps left behind by the pandemic. This decision cannot be made simply because a class has a low student count, not due to difficulty attracting teachers to our district, and certainly not because it saves our district money. Nothing is more fiscally responsible than providing a grade-specific educator to each of your students. We are asking that each class, each student, each need be evaluated before these decisions are made for them. They need your every consideration. They have been through too much. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Our final speaker tonight is Chris Peterson.
Good evening, Superintendent Noguchi and Cabinet, Board President Brown, and trustees, our Modesto City Schools learning community. My name is Chris Peterson, President of Modesto Teachers Association. I would be remiss not to recognize the community effort this evening. You know, typically these board meetings are pretty lonely in the audience. It's nice to see so many committed and engaged folk. Thank you for being advocates for your children. On behalf of the proud members of Modesto Teachers Association and affiliated locals, including Ceres, Turlock, even the California Teachers Association, and our very active Equity Committee, I have an invitation for the board. There is a documentary entitled East of Salinas, a documentary that will be free screening to our community, State Theater in May, that the associations working together will make everyone available, not just trustees. Originally, this was planned for spring 2020. If your memory's a bit shaken, we were a little occupied at that time, but we'll keep chopping wood and we're gonna put the shindig together soon. And it's an opportunity to see a different part of California and reflect what's going on in our own community. So Saturday, May 13th at the State Theater, you don't have to write it down. I might know a guy with an invitation and even a flyer. And if you need flyers in the audience, I got a few hundred somewhere. We'll find some. It will be doors opening at the State at 12 noon. Program will begin at 1. It's a documentary looking at the life of a young child, migrant, bilingual, in a public school setting. Gee, I wonder if that would relate to Modesto City Schools. I think would be a wonderful opportunity for you all. So please join us. We'd love to hear and see from you. May 13th, 12 noon, State Theater. Be there, be square. Thank you.
Thank you for all that have spoken to us this evening. We appreciate your concern and your passion. Again, we cannot engage in discussion or take formal action on any items that are not on the agenda. We thank you for following the protocol in addressing the board and for taking the time to share your views with us this evening. In just a moment, we'll move on to item B1, which is a report from our student representative, Dara Patel. But we'll We'll wait for a moment till we have everyone's attention.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you've all had a great day, and for those of us that had spring break, a relaxing spring break. I was gonna say, I wish we had more spring break, but the last time I wished for that, we all know what happened, so. Before spring break, though, we had an inter-high meeting, and we had a couple of updates from a couple of our high schools. So Johansson High School has placed bags in each of their classes for our Birthday in a Box service project that we're doing as an inter-high school district-wide service project, and they've created a timeline for the project. They've also finished conducting their second blood drive this year, and the juniors are currently setting up for prom, which seems to be a trend in all of the high schools. Enoch's High is also setting up boxes for service projects and also setting up for prom. Modesto High is having a Panda Express fundraiser this Wednesday to raise money for the service project, as it is full steam ahead for the Birthday in a Box. So whatever contributions that can be made by purchasing meals at Panda Express will go to our district-wide fundraiser. Additionally, they will be having prom soon on May 6th, a spring fling this Friday, which is, the theme is Noche de Grupo, and having a blood drive this mid-April. And finally, Grigori High School will they had their Grigori's Got Talent and announced their winners. They're preparing for prom and fundraising birthday pencils for our Birthday in a Box fundraiser. A few items were discussed at that meeting regarding school climate and changes. A lot of the students wanted to go back to their school sites and discuss more with their ASB classes, as well as talk more one-on-one with their student body about what changes they would like to see made or how they feel about the school climate. The overall trend seemed to be issues with the restrooms and infrastructure. Specifically, Johansson High School wanted me to mention that there has been a high influx of trash on campus, issues with the restrooms and water drains, as well as a lack of supplies such as feminine products. They wanted me to express their concerns regarding the lack of resources and implementing solutions such as more trash cans around campus and a restock of supplies in the restroom. So with that, that concludes my board report. Thank you.
I think we're back on. I was trying to keep up with you. You had so much to share with us. I wanted to take some notes. So thank you for that great report and for all the contact and collaboration that happens with our students on that Inter-High Council. We appreciate hearing all the good things that are happening, especially all that great service that's happening. Blood drives and Birthday in a Box project, great things. All righty. So we'll now move to item B2. This is a report on the Special Education Transportation Task Force. Mr. Zierle.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, President Brown, trustees. This was a collaborative work between Business Services and Student Support Services led by Associate Superintendent Mark Herbst. And the purpose of the task force, as with many of our recent initiatives, was just really started by a simple question. Why do we not provide special needs transportation for Modesto City Schools? It is contracted out with Stora Transportation. And so the task force was created with the purpose of exploring the possibilities for Modesto City Schools, SELPA, to provide door-to-door transportation services for our special needs students who are provided this service through an individualized education plan or an IEP. That was the purpose of the task force, the basis of this task force, and it was never intended to be any type of a negative reflection on STORR. We're very proud of our relationship with STORR. Later in the agenda, there is a contract renewal with STORR, but we felt we just deserved to find out what possibilities would it take for us to provide the door-to-door service instead of contracting it out with a private contractor. Here you see the task force representatives. Tonight we have Dr. Allen, Senior Director with the SELPA, and Christina Romero, a Senior Director with the SELPA, who will come up and present information on some slides later on. Also with us tonight, we have our parent representative, the Chair of the Community Advisory Committee, Emmanuel Palomore. We have our current Director of Transportation, Mr. Stephen Fernandez, and a transportation consultant that was tasked with organizing this task force, Mr. Kirk Hunter. I hope I didn't miss anybody else, but you see the names of the task force also represented here. We met twice, first December 6th, and then January 24th, this year, 23. I'm now going to turn it over to Christina Romero, who will talk about it from the SELPA or the program perspective.
Good evening. As Mr. Zierle talked about, this is a transportation service for our students with disabilities. And students become eligible for transportation via their IEP or their individualized education plan and through that process. This provides door-to-door service for students for varied reasons, including cognitive impairments, physical disabilities, severe behavioral challenges, or due to our regionalized programming occurring just at varied sites throughout the district. We currently have 650 students in the MCS SELPA who are served by STORR Transportation. And as indicated in the last slide, with the exception of our regionalized programming, our riders are predominantly students with moderate to severe disabilities. Historically, we have not had the capacity with which to transport our students. And so we were really excited to explore the opportunity that should we have the resource to do that, what would that look like? As was mentioned by Mr. Zierle, the task force met to explore the options of MCS providing this service to our students. And while he indicated that STORR has served our district and our students consistently over the year, our increased needs, some of the changes in scheduling, and the expansion of our programming has resulted in some areas of concern from SELPA administration that we've shared on this slide. Some of the most pertinent concerns are the late buses and inability to control our routing, which have resulted in our students missing classes and getting to school quite late. And while the use of other vehicles other than buses, car transports or taxi services have also caused some uneasiness in our families for our youngest scholars. Next, I'd like to kind of introduce Christy Allen. She's going to share with you some of our options for consideration that were discussed by the task force.
Good evening. So really at this point, the board has two options that they can choose from. First is to continue with our current contracted vendor, STORR, or to look at how we can consider the possibility of bringing transportation for our students with disabilities back to Modesto City Schools SELPA. So obviously the benefits have been discussed, but looking at having complete control over all of the issues that are currently facing our students with disabilities. Also the control to provide bus drivers training, which we don't currently have. And then looking at including those same staff members in professional development that would continue to build their understanding of how to support students with disabilities. And then finally, what I feel is the most important is the inclusion of students with disabilities in field trip transportation. Now that might be troublesome to you, but currently our students with disabilities who have moderate to severe that are non-ambulatory students, so our students that are in wheelchairs or have other needs are unable to be transported in our MCS buses. That is something that MCS has looked into and has seen, and so it's something as part of this task force that we've looked at as a way to be able to combat that is by having new buses that would be able to have our students that are non-ambulatory be served on the same buses as our general education peers. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tim Zierle.
Thank you. We all know and appreciate the number of years that STORR has, by basic, what I can tell, STORR has always provided our contracted services for Modesto City Schools to our students, special needs students. And whether they continue to do it or we do it, we would face the same challenges post-COVID that STORE is dealing with. But as you heard from the program, from the SELPA directors, we would be solely responsible. We would be the ones directly responsible for the staff, the transportation staff, dealing with the parents, and we feel that that would be a benefit. The task force felt that that would be a benefit. We have our own issues with regular ed home-to-school transportation post-COVID, as many of our operations do with staffing, and we would deal with those same issues if we provided, just like STORE is, if we provided the transportation services to our special needs students. We don't have special needs buses, so we would have to purchase the equipment and hire the transportation staff, just like STORE would do or would have to do. The task force unanimously recommended pursuing these options to provide special education transportation. That would, that would require a phase in. We can't do it. We can't do it in the next, in the next 4 to 6 months in time for the next school year. We couldn't possibly do that. So it was discussed to develop a possibility of a 3-year phasing plan for Modesto City Schools to provide special needs transportation for students with an IEP. That would include purchasing the equipment, hiring the staff, training the staff, everything we would need in order to provide that level of service to our families with special needs students. Now we will welcome any questions the board may have.
First, is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? Ms. Martinez.
Good evening, Debbie Martinez, we're La Raza Parents Union. I do have a question. Where it says eligibility and then it gives transportation be required due to, and then the last one, what kind of programming is that? I don't understand that one. It's right underneath behavioral challenges. That's one. Okay.
So a regionalized program is a program that is provided at only a certain location based on the needs of the student. So for example, our deaf and hard of hearing program that is located at Lakewood, it is the only one of its kind.
Okay.
So no matter where a student lives in the district, that's what where
where
they're
it's at.
best to, correct.
Thank you. Then, when it was just presented out about the busing, it is so true, and I'm going to speak for the parents now. It's beyond their control that their children are placed on a bus, and then they get to school late, and then they're tardy. And it's a vicious cycle, because and then they get in trouble that their children are tardied. So we need to find some sort of sensitivity for these children that are arriving on the bus, whether it's a special needs bus or a regular bus, because it's beyond parents' control. They did their job, they put them on the bus. How they get to their sites is not the parents' fault, so I don't think that these children should be dinged for being tardied. And I'm just gonna piggyback on what your audience said that already left on these combination classes. Again, what about our autism children that are being placed in these GE classes that are being sent to school with no help for these teachers? That's just something else to consider on the combo classes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, any questions or comments from the board? I see Vice President Irvin.
Yes, I have a few questions. Dr. Allen, she referred to going busing back to SELPA. At one time, did we provide the busing for?
Mark would have to help me on that. Historically, I think
We
he's-
have not historically provided transportation services to our students with moderate to severe disabilities since I've been in the district. So that's a
Right.
good 17 years, and I don't think it
Okay.
happened before
'Cause
that.
I'm gonna say, I was there 15 years, I don't remember it
Yeah, I
either. Then also, STORE has been providing that service, and they already have the appropriate types of buses already. Do we know what the cost on those buses would be if the district were to go and to start that service. And also in that same breath, would there be additional training needed for bus drivers to provide that level of service? Because I know that STORE does that for their drivers.
So I'm not completely familiar, and I believe Mr. Fernandez is out here. He may be able to speak to some of the training that went into STORE. But I would say that based on the information that we've received from the teachers in the task force, as well as our parent, our CAC chair, the concerns are that there aren't a lot of trainings that go outside of what the requirement is to be compliant with transportation requirements. When we're talking about the needs of our students, we're talking about the things that happen within our SELPA. Many of our students have behavioral demands that are outside of what STORE is able to train their staff with because they are individual to the student. The nice thing, and one of the things that we discussed within this task force, is those bus aides will also be or can be utilized as paraprofessionals in the classroom. So they will know those students best. So on top of being trained in being a bus aide, they will be trained in all of the behavioral expectations and needs that would serve the students on those buses.
Okay.
So, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
the special needs buses obviously are much smaller capacity buses than our 40-foot transit buses. They run on regular unleaded fuel, and they're about 120,000 each for those buses. So that's what we're looking at.
There's also, one of the buses that was described to us was that there's the ability to make it where it can put students that are non-ambulatory, so again, those wheelchair students, on the bus with general education students. So it would allow for inclusion, which STORE currently does not have that capacity. So that's an excitement for us.
Okay. And then what prompted the discussion to, to get us to this point, to this developing the task force and looking at, because I'm also, one from them, that old school that's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So realistically, from the SELPA, it was the high number of concerns that we have received from parents over the last couple of years about routing, about bus time frames, the amount of time that students are on buses, customer service concerns, and really having the fact that we can't control those aspects because it is a contracted vendor. So while we can communicate with them, we don't have control over what's happening day to day. On top of that, we don't own the routes, meaning that we cannot tell them how a student should get from point A to point B to cut back time. So that was a concern for us as well. Additionally, staffing is a concern.
And again, it was, it was, we just needed to know. It's not uncommon for school districts our size to provide special needs transportation. However, no district in Stanislaus County does that. So every district in the county is contracted with STORE transportation. So from an operational perspective, it was, okay, why not? Is this something we could do? In addition to the SELPA program concerns as to not having that direct contact between our parents and the contractor, that would give us that ability to be the direct hub for that parent and their student with special needs. So it was a combination of a couple of things, and it really was, it's never been done. Why has it never been done? Could it be done?
Okay, and my last question is, has there been a cost analysis done, a part of that?
We have done some, and we would share that with the board when we bring a plan forward. I mean, we have done some kind of high-level summaries as to, we know what we're paying STORE. I mean, it is on the agenda tonight. We now know the number of routes. So, I mean, we can, and we have put a number to what would, this is not, and let me be very clear, if this gets brought forward, it's not a cost-saving initiative. We're not going to do it any cheaper or less expensive than what STORE is doing it. But we have put numbers just conceptually. Now that the task force has completed, we can dial those in much better just to get an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Maestas.
Thank you. So just a follow-up on Vice President Irvin's question. about purchasing new buses. Is there an opportunity for these to be electric?
Yes, there is always an opportunity for EV buses. And again, as I mentioned earlier, these are regular unleaded fuel engines. And they run much cleaner than the diesel engine we currently have, less costly. But we are exploring what that option would look like for EV buses as well as regular fuel burning buses as well.
I look forward to seeing that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Trustee Daly.
Trustee Irvin took some of my questions, but Mr. Zerling, you kind of prompted another. Do we know the original reason that Storrs was chosen to do this?
I don't know of
Well,
any historian that knows that.
When
but,
I had first come into the district, and again, that was 17 years ago, there was an analysis that we were doing back then. We did not have the capacity in terms of having that many buses at that time on the yard, so it did not go forward then. It has been something that's been brought up a couple times over the years, but it really is the feasibility of being able to have the buses to be able to do it. I would agree wholeheartedly on the statements about the benefits that I think that it would bring to the SELPA. To the point that Vice President Irvin made, having the element of being able to work with our own district staff on any issues. There are times to where a student who needs to be routed oftentimes waits up to 10 days to get that routing. I believe we could do that a lot better and a lot faster. So there's a number of benefits that I think that the SELPA would receive by moving in this direction.
Stephen Fernandez, your Director of Transportation. My previous career was with STORR for 37 years. STORR started, there was a new school site that was opened up in 1952. It was the Washington school site dedicated to special education. And STORR was contracted in 1952 to provide that transportation service and has done it ongoing since that time. So that's the history of it back in 1952. And in regards to the questions about STORR and training, STORR does an outstanding job at training drivers to drive buses. But STORR really doesn't have any educational type background and to train drivers on the specifics of the disabilities. And so that sometimes is where the miss is. And that's where we would really excel because we would be able to do both. Train drivers to drive buses and train drivers on the specifics of the disabilities that they're going to be handling on board those buses with the expertise that exists in the SELPA office. I think those are the two questions that I...
Mm-hmm. Vice President Irvin. Actually, Trustee Lopez, you were next.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about, I know you said you mocked up numbers, but do we have a number of how many bus drivers we would need if we were to, fully be able to take this on through our SELPA? What does that number look like? Because, one of the things that comes out to me is there, I know that there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, a driver shortage, and where are we going to be supplementing that need?
Yeah, well, if we were 100% providing the transportation, we would need about 60 routes to do that. So, which is again why it wouldn't be possible in a year or even 2 years' time. But about 60 routes is what we estimate would be needed with our current population of students with transportation IEP.
Thank you.
Vice President Irvin.
I just wanted to go back to what Ms. Barrera was mentioning about the tardies. We're not disciplining kids for being tardy, right, on the buses? Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
No, absolutely not.
So I have a couple of questions. So we're talking about smaller buses that are gas instead of diesel and much smaller vehicles that will be transporting students. Is the same license required as for one of our large buses?
I will rely on the expert to answer that question.
The answer is yes, the exact same license is required.
Okay. So that's good to know. The other question is, with this transition that we're anticipating, what pushback are we receiving from STORE? Are they welcoming the opportunity for us to take on some of these students, or are they resisting?
No, we've had, we've spent about the last 4 months in contract language negotiations with the president, the owner of STORE Transportation. And actually, in our contract, if it's approved, we have the ability to what they're referring to, and this was their idea, to take back a number of students or a percentage of students over the term of the agreement. So they already conceptually have agreed to the idea of us at some point providing transportation services.
All right.
And I just want to be clear on Trustee Maestas' question. What we found with our diesel engine, transit buses for regular transportation, there's dollars available to remove a diesel engine off the road and replace it with an electric bus. There's not the same ability to expand our service for electric buses. That's going to go into our consideration, but there's not any incentive financially for us to expand and add EV buses versus fuel buses. But that's information we'll provide, when we get to that point.
All right. So this is a report. We are not taking action this evening. We thank you for the information that you've provided us. We'll now move to what was on the consent agenda as item C4, which is now item B2A. And is there someone from the cabinet who would be able to present this information about that item? This is the contract with STORE.
Yeah, myself and Mr. Fernandez were part of the contract negotiations with STORE.
Great. We would appreciate hearing a little bit about that contract, please.
So I think what will be helpful is we pulled it off consent. So what was the reasoning for pulling it off consent? That way we can frame the discussion or answer
Okay.
the questions.
So it was actually my request to pull it off consent because it was so related to the presentation that we just heard. My concern was whether or not there was a conflict between the two agenda items. And I did read in the language for the item that was on consent that we did have the ability to, in contract, to, over the period of the contract, take back some of the transportation services. So.
Yes, that is correct. What we've, for the last several years, we've been operating on just a standard kind of one-page services agreement with STORE Transportation. When the rest of the districts in the Stanislaus County SELPA have had a much larger, more detailed contract for providing transportation services to the students in Stanislaus County. So that was what we began with. We began with that contract, and it was STORE's intention to have a multi-year contract. That's what they wanted. We agreed to that. We have in front of the board is a 2-year contract beginning July 1, 23 with 2 consecutive 1-year renewals, so it could go for a 4-year period. What we got is we got control of our routing. Before, we did not have any control of our routing. We did not have, it was 100% provided by the contractor. So we got in the contract the ability to control our routes, as you heard from Dr. Allen and Christina Romero, that was a concern of ours, to be able to create those. We also, STORE got a fuel clause. They wanted a fuel clause in there with the way fuel costs have gone up and down and fluctuated over the last couple of years. But it was something when we were done, both of us in any contract negotiation, you give something to get something, and we both felt comfortable with it. It's something that we haven't had with STORE. for a number of years. We've been working on just a very small template, a service agreement that we have there's language in here that will give us more control over the types of vehicles, as you heard. It's called non-conforming vehicles or vans. There's language in here about ride times and delays. We have more control over all that now than we've had before, just like the Stanislaus County SILPA.
Great.
It was only a timing thing. One didn't have anything to do with the other. They just happened to be on the same board agenda at the same time.
All right. Well, thank you. Do we have any comments from the public regarding this matter? Seeing none, any questions from the board or comments? So do we have a motion to accept the contract with Storer Transportation for the 2-year period and all right. Motion by Trustee Marks, second by Trustee Irvin. Vice President Irvin, those in favor? Thank you. All right, we'll now move to item B3, a report on the Modesto City Schools Gifted and Talented Education, or GATE program.
Well, that's not going to work.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Board President Brown, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, you will hear about the purpose and process of the GATE Task Force, their recommendations, and suggested next steps. The work of the task force is aligned to District Goals 1 and 2. However, the work is most closely aligned with District Goal 1 in the area of ensuring equitable access. So why are we here tonight? What brought us to a place of examining how our GATE program supports all GATE students? During the spring of 2022, the Equity and Social Justice Task Force examined data from an equity audit and made some recommendations to look more deeply at how we are providing support to all GATE identified students. You may recall that in June, that same task force presented this data from the equity audit. You can see that the areas highlighted of red are of most concern, as the data demonstrates that we have student groups that are underrepresented as well as other groups that are overrepresented in our regionalized GATE program. This data was also presented at that time. This is a representation of the students that opt out of our regionalized GATE program, choosing to stay at their neighborhood school. One of the students that opted out, 61% were Hispanic and Latino, and 27% were socioeconomically disadvantaged. This data means that a high number of students of those student groups chose not to attend their regionalized GATE program. The Equity and Social Justice Task Force summarized their findings. Of particular note are the underrepresented student groups, Hispanic students and socioeconomically disadvantaged students, the overrepresented student group, white students, and the number of students that opt out of the GATE program. It was also noted that transportation is the #1 reason that families opt out of participating. This is not due to the lack of district transportation, as all students that are GATE identified are offered district transportation to their identified regional GATE program. The families are not wanting their students transported away from their neighborhood school. At that time, the Equity and Social Justice Task Force also made some recommendations to the board. That's what brings us here tonight. The GATE Task Force was developed and has been meeting since September. And the GATE Task Force developed some recommendations, including a pilot program. The GATE Task Force was convened in September and has members representing parents, teachers, and administrators from both schools with a regionalized GATE program, as well as schools whose students would need to be transported to a regionalized program. We also had district office support, including Maricela Mota, to help us with the data and recommendations to ensure that we are providing support to our EL GATE students. We have been meeting since September and are continuing to meet. During our meetings, we looked at data from the equity audit findings and examined current practices of differentiated support services within MCS. We also examined the learning needs of our gifted and talented learners. During our October meeting, we developed a list of research areas to ensure that our recommendations would be based on best practice. Areas of focus for research were program structure, student identification, curriculum, instruction, as well as teacher and administrative professional learning. A subcommittee then attended a national conference with each person focusing on a different area of research. The subcommittee brought information back to the task force. Using that information about best practices, the committee developed the following recommendations. One best practice researched is cluster grouping. Cluster grouping keeps students at their neighborhood school by putting all students at a grade level that are identified as gifted or talented in the same classroom. For example, all students in the 3rd grade that are identified as GATE learners would be placed at the same classroom at their neighborhood school. This moves us towards equitable access for our students. The first recommendation is to pilot a cluster model on 6 elementary campuses. This model focuses on the Equity and Social Justice Task Force's recommendation to address supports for students who do not attend a GATE site. This would increase the number of students with access to GATE support. 3rd grade was chosen as the grade level to pilot because they would remain at their neighborhood school. 3rd grade is the first grade that MCS offers the regionalized GATE program. This is a list of the sites that we are recommending we pilot the GATE cluster grouping. To promote the success of a cluster model, we will offer professional learning for students of those cluster classes, as well as coaches for ongoing support. Although teachers already implement various levels of differentiation within their classrooms, this professional learning would focus on an increase in rigor and complexity. This professional learning would be available in a number of different formats, from virtual conferences, asynchronous learning models, and conferences. The National Association of Gifted Children would be our primary resource for this support and training initially. We will continue to research other organizations that offer professional learning focusing on gifted learners. Recommendation number 3 is to refine our student GATE identification process. We currently use the national norms of GATE identification assessment. National norms are based on the percentage of population of that particular student group. For example, student groups of English learners represent 10.4% at the national level and 18.6% in California, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. In Modesto City Schools, the student group of English learners represents 26% of our population, and that number increases in our elementary schools. So nationally normed assessments do not account for those differences in our student groups. Creating local norms addresses some barriers to equitable access to our GATE support service. Local norming is a process of using our own district data to identify students that are demonstrating areas of giftedness or exceptional talent. Local norming takes into consideration our student group representation and which is significantly different than the national norms that are used by the traditional identification process. The assessment companies are moving in this direction and provide assistance and support in developing local norms. So next steps. For the remainder of this year, the task force is refining the GATE local norming process, identifying GATE students, providing parents with information regarding the benefits of the GATE service. This was another recommendation from the task force. And then providing professional development for teachers. Moving into next year, we recommend the pilot of the third grade GATE cluster at 6 campuses. All other grades and school sites continue with the current practice at the 3 regional sites. We would monitor student progress, both within the cluster groupings as well as in our regional program. And then we would move to refine the cluster model for further expansion.
All right. A lot of information there on the gifted and talented education programs. And it's exciting to hear opportunities for expansion and include more students. So do we have comments from the public on this agenda item? Ms. Martinez.
Thank you for that presentation. Debbie Martinez, we're La Raza Parents Union. 2 questions. What does GATE cluster grouping actually mean? And the second question is, about 10 years ago, I remember fighting with the families of Bret Harte when they were removing this program from their site. Is it gonna be introduced back to Bret Harte families? Because they fought hard to try to keep that program and it was removed from them. So I would like to see that name put on the piloting, if possible, just to give them a ray of hope again over at Bret Harte. And Fairview too. Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time? We'll move then to board comments and questions.
A comment?
Yes.
She wants to know what is the cluster grouping? How do you define that, or what's it going to work like, or what is it? Thank you.
Can we get a clarification on that?
No, it's not like a combination class. What it would be is the students, for example, at 3rd grade school A that are identified as GATE students would all be placed in a single 3rd grade classroom. So it's not creating combinations based on GATE identification. It's just grouping the students in the same room.
Thank you. So were there further comments from the public? Seeing none, comments or questions from the board? Vice President Irvin?
So yes, with this pilot program, eventually, I guess based on the results and the data from the pilot, one, how long we're gonna keep the pilot until we make a decision on how to proceed, and if and when we do proceed, and it's in a direction, it says, oh, we got this positive data and backup and all this stuff. Are we gonna move towards GATE for all at all of our schools? Is that the end game, so to speak, if everything works out?
I think that the plan is to pilot and see how successful it is. If we find that it's successful for our students and meeting their needs, allowing them to stay on campus, then we would want to entertain the idea of expanding it in a way that makes sense for our families.
Thank you.
Trustee Maestas?
So first, I want to thank all of the hard work that went into all of this from the committee, all the time and effort that they put in, and the equity committee for starting the audits on all of these things. So I really do appreciate all of that hard work. And I meant to say this earlier, I also appreciate all the work from the task force that we heard from last time, and sometimes it sounds like I get a little, I don't know, enthusiastic. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that I really do appreciate, even though I have my own view on these things, I do appreciate all the hard work and the recommendations. So I want to front load that. First question, clarifying question on cluster. How is this different than what we have now? It sounds to me like it's the same thing, only at other sites. So you're just taking the kids that are GATE and giving them their own classroom. That's what happens at GATE right now, right? So just can you clarify the difference?
It wouldn't be an entire classroom of GATE students. It would be a group of GATE students placed in a regular classroom. So there would be other non-identified students, non-GATE students within the class.
So let's say we had 10 GATE identified students and what's the minimum class size for third grade, 24? So we would have 14 non-classified GATE students in the same class. That's what we're getting. Okay, so that's different than what we have now. Right now, the 3 sites, and I believe those are Lakewood, Sonoma, and Martone, is that correct? Students are split into designated classes, GATE, non-GATE, correct? Okay, so it's a bit different. What happens when the cluster is more than the max class size? So let's suppose we end up with a cluster of 26. What do we do? Okay. I'm just trying to get to, like, if we get to a place where we have a large cluster, are we going to make it their own class, or are we going to separate clusters so we have 2 classes with clusters in there with non-GATE students?
So I think part of this is also learning, right? So that's why we start with 6 schools, and if and when we come up with different challenges, we figure out what's the best course of action, right?
Okay.
So as far as the numbers piece, we had roughly 100 students that didn't choose to go to one of our regional centers, but that's over 19 schools. So to get 26 at one school, I just don't think you're going to have the numbers. It would be great if we did.
Okay.
But I don't think we'd have that.
Okay.
But I think it's this next year, it's learning and adapting and identifying what are the challenges and benefits so we can then expand it out as we move forward.
Thanks. I've got quite a few questions. Sorry about that, guys. How might this affect, I guess it really won't. I'm thinking will this affect combo grade classes at all? Will the additional, for example, if some kids aren't going to the GATE designated school, now they're back in their own school, will that affect numbers at other schools that would create more grade combo classes, like 4-5 or 5-6? We won't know until we find out. Okay, so I answered that question for myself. Thank you. So the only other thing, I guess this is more of a comment than a question. Our current GATE schools, Lakewood, Sonoma, Martone, I'm glad that we're looking at how do we set up some equity to provide services at other schools, because right now we have there's nothing for Southside kids or Northside, this. We have 2 schools that are literally blocks away that are GATE schools. So I always thought that was kind of a strange thing. This is a kind of a comment. I have 3 kids. 2 of them went through GATE. 1 of them is in 3rd grade GATE right now. And I still believe GATE is by itself an inequitable program, any way you cut it. When you start separating kids by abilities, you start to create inequities. And that's within a school. I've heard of bullying in school from GATE kids. I'm the smart kid, you're not, because I'm in a different class. And that just perpetuates a feeling from other kids that, oh, I must not be smart. And when you separate kids like that, it's another form of tracking that we know tracking is an inequitable system. So having an inequitable system at one school and then just furthering that inequity in all schools is just creating more inequity. So I couldn't see how, I'm interested in seeing, I guess, some data, but I think all kids should be integrated with all kids at their grade level, especially in elementary school. When that happens, you get the good kids with every other kid, and every kid gets to be a good kid. And then you don't maybe not have situations where you have a class that has 7 IEPs in one class, and you're struggling, that teacher is struggling because you took all the top kids and put them in one section. So I would hope that we can find a way that works for our kids soon. This is a more pressing matter than, let's start with 3rd grade, and then 5 years later, we figured something out. If we got, just gonna tell you straight out, my daughter's in 3rd grade GATE. If we got rid of GATE in her class, I would still be okay. And I know that my kids went through that, and they got that education, but that still wouldn't bother me, because now she's being able to work with all kids, and I think that's a better system for our kids. So that's my point of view. If it comes out and we have to vote on it, I just want to let everyone know what my point of view is, and that I'm kind of sticking to that. But I'd like to see something happen sooner than later. Thank you. That's my time. Thanks.
Trustee Marks.
Thank you. Always good to hear all the opinions on the board. That's what we're here for. So for me personally, I'm super excited about this. I remember in 1998 when we collapsed the GATE program at Marshall School and Kirsten, and it was horrible. This room was filled with parents that were so upset, and I had no idea. We had no vote on it. It was just a report that we were collapsing in at those 2 schools because we didn't have enough room, and so we moved it over to Martone, and I asked to please bring it back to Marshall. And because I was mentoring refugees from around the world, and they were very much opposed to having their students transported that far away from them. So that was and that was interesting that was in this report. So I'm excited to see this and giving students opportunities that they may not have had in other situations. So I'm glad we're expanding it. I look forward to seeing how successful it is, because it'll be it's a pilot. So we'll see how it does and how many parents actually choose to have their students in it, because it's a lot more rigor. It's a lot more, there's just a lot more to it than the classes that some of them are in right now. So I wanted to find out how we chose the schools that we chose. So the 6 that are chosen for this year and how that came about.
So one of the people on our committee is also Senior Director Ernesto Calderon.
Okay.
And there are the 6 sites have been selected to have additional support due to other programs.
Okay.
And so we thought that would be something that maybe we could lean into as we are kind of developing what does this look like. It wouldn't necessarily be something that if we chose to expand the program that would expand with it. However, it does provide us a little bit more support that we could lean into to really refine what does professional development look like, how can we train other personnel that are already on the site to provide support to the program.
Okay, and so just to bring up the idea, I know Bret Harte and Shackelford are fairly close to each other, but was there a reason is that the reason that Shackelford was chosen over Bret Harte to put the program there instead?
I can get that information for you.
Okay, that would be helpful, thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
We've been given some grant funding at those 6 sites.
Oh,
And so we can
okay.
use that to help support the training and work out some of the kinks that'll inevitably come around to really refine the process prior to being able to move it to all sites.
Okay, that's great, thank you. That's all.
All right, Trustee Daly.
Kind of more of a comment piggybacking off of Trustee Maestas' comment. about the cluster classes. I'm just a little concerned that those are going to present the same problems that we had tonight with the combo classes. Then I think the only other question that I had that hasn't been answered is just more of a, probably a new trustee question, is what assessment tools are we currently using to assess the students' gait?
We currently use COGAT is our primary assessment, and then we also look at our district benchmarks, we look at grades, we get information from teachers. We're also looking at a possible pilot of the Naglieri. It's a newer assessment. We're trying to determine, although the assessments indicate that they have accounted for linguistic differences in students and language differences, that's one of the reasons of involving Marisela Mora. We've found that perhaps it's not as controlled, and so the local norming will give us more information about how do we address that for our students.
Great, thank you. And Student Board Representative Patel.
I just wanted to say that I love the idea of being able to offer GATE to more elementary schools and more students. I just have a few questions though. So with the report, the 3 recommendations that were given, those were all 3 recommendations that would go together, right? Okay. So I guess starting off with my first question, kind of, it's been talked about before, but cluster grouping. I was a GATE student myself at Lakewood, and one of the things that the teachers would tell us is that GATE it goes at a faster speed than the other classes. How would that impact the other students in the class who are not GATE students and their, I guess, emotions or feelings and their learning environment with the GATE students, as well as the teacher and their abilities to keep up with both levels?
So one of the things that best practices is telling us that for our GATE learners, it is not necessarily about covering more curriculum more quickly, but going at a different level of rigor and complexity. By creating cluster groupings, the other thing that it does is it allows students that are perhaps not GATE identified, but might have an exceptional talent in math to have access to that same rigor and complexity. So it actually is a way to support more students in the way that the gifted brain learns, and then give those students that are perhaps not overall gifted, but talented in a particular area, that same access to rigor and complexity.
Okay, because I know that the speed as well as the rigor is something that can be a disparity to students, especially if it's, half or a quarter of the class is GATE and the other is not identifying as GATE, as well as the requirements or the material that the teacher would have to cover at 2 different rigors or 2 different speeds. But I guess my next question is, you talked about the COGAT as the identifier currently. So the local norming identifier, would that simply be through just like student grades and benchmarks? Is that how that's going to be identified now?
The task force is still working on that. Our next meeting is tomorrow. We'll also be working on looking at our different student groups, and this is where we'll get the assistance from the company and pulling out by student group different data that we have. We can do local normings by building, by student groups within buildings. So it's really, we're going to need to do some examination of what is best practice that best meets the needs of our students and identifying them.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Lopez.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this report. I had a similar line of question as my colleagues, Maestas, Daly, and Patel. I really looking at who makes the other half of that classroom, right? We're talking about possibly, like if there's a group of 10, right, and you're 24, the other 14, who's making up the other rest of the classroom? Because best case scenario, we talked about Jaime Escalante here, right, where he elevated the rigor. We've talked about him in the past. He elevated the rigor by just having kids move up to that standard and working from there. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, what I fear is that there might be of mispairing of students or and where some are going to fall behind. Not the saying that I think that that's going to happen is something that's going to be interesting to look at from in this pilot is what goes into that grouping, what goes into designing that classroom so that there is still rigor for the other individuals in the room, but rigor to their standards, right? And so that, as mentioned before, some don't fall behind or other classrooms are struggling because they're made up of, whatever, they're made up of a different pairing that maybe could have been closer assimilated to students in the other classrooms. So it's not really much of a question, it's much more of a what I'm looking at, and something to be interesting to look at it in the piloting program is what goes into that makeup of that of designing the classrooms, right? So that we can hopefully, best case scenario, elevate the rigor of all the students through having GATE curriculum having them exposed to it, right? And hopefully not the other side of that. That's my comment.
Thank you. Trustee Mastis, did you have one last?
Yeah, I had a question, and maybe you can send this out in a board report. It's for some data. I'd like to know what % of the student groups test into GATE. So I know we have the percentages here, MCS K through 6. Well, we have GATE percentages on here, and we have percentage of students that opt out on those percentages. But what we don't have is the results from testing and how that compares to the overall population of the percentage. Does that make sense what I'm asking for? I'll explain. Yeah, Rich gets it. So, because I just want to see if there's a significant difference in the percentage of students that are testing in the GATE. Oftentimes these tests tend to skew certain groups, and I'd like to see if that is there might be some bias within the testing itself, which I know that we're going to take a look at refining that process. But I'd like to look at the data on that particular piece.
So just a clarification, you like to see the district demographics as a whole compared to those students who are identified as GATE through the COGAT assessment by demographic group?
Yes, not enrolled in GATE.
Correct, yeah.
But
By
identified.
demographic group that.
Right, by demographic group.
Yeah.
And how that percentage compares.
Thank you. I have one last question. So we're going to be doing this pilot with 6 schools in the 3rd grade only, and we will continue the other GATE level classes at the 3 schools that have GATE now. So will that also include 3rd grade at those 3 schools? So that means that there's going to open up possibly some more seats available at those 3 campuses for 3rd graders. Do we know how many students from these 6 schools our neighborhoods are now attending those 3 schools? Do we have?
We don't have exact numbers yet because we're still refining the identification. So we've completed the
So what,
assessment.
that's not what I'm asking. I mean, in the 3 through 6th grade classes at the 3 schools now, how many of our students in that program were drawn from any of these 6 schools?
We can get you that data.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to see that. All right, this is another report.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry, it just came up, but can you get me this data? I'm sorry, I apologize. What in the committee, the task force, why was it chosen to just do 3rd grade at certain schools instead of 3rd grade at all the schools? Like pick one grade to pilot instead of one grade and one school?
As
Just
mentioned earlier.
cost and grant funding?
That's a great question. We have some extra grant funding at these specific 6 sites.
Okay.
To allow us to maybe, again, figure out what's working, what's not working, and really work out those concerns. Instead of doing it at all the schools, we can focus on 6, which is much like we do with lots of pilots, right? If we pilot curriculum, we don't put it into every classroom. Or as we pilot a new project, we do that at certain sites. You work out the problems, you come back and you say, okay, here's the problems we can solve, and then you move forward with it at other sites.
Got it, okay, thanks.
All right, thank you for your presentation. So on the agenda, we're now moving into item G1, items to be placed on future board agendas. Do we have anything from the board? Trustee Daly.
This could be something that was done in the past, so I don't know, but I'm interested in getting a report regarding the race and socioeconomic makeup of students that are placed in the IC rooms, I guess would be what they would called, as well as then ultimately moved to alternative education programs such as Elliott. So the race and socioeconomic makeup of the students that are placed into the IC rooms, is that what they're called? Intervention rooms.
We're doing a report.
Okay. And then ultimately, though, transitioned or moved to alternative education programs as well.
Two separate.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So looks like we're finished with our agenda tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I saw Trustee, our Student Representative Patel, and second by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much for attending our meeting tonight.